Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the show Real Time, where we are live talking about film and television and everything in between. And today we have a really special guest because you guessed it, it is May the 4th. So May the 4th be with you, and it's Star Wars Day. So we're going to talk about Star Wars with none other than my older brother, who is an expert in Star Wars. Let's dive right into it. Hey there, everybody. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Mustafa Talib here with Cinema King Productions. And like I said, it is May the 4th, and May the 4th be with you. It is Star Wars Day. And in our time of being quarantined, we could really use the Force right now to take care of business, but it doesn't work like that. So yeah, like I said, we have a very special guest today, my older brother, Abdurrahman Talib, who is an expert, in my opinion, of Star Wars and the entire galaxy. Firstly, though, I want to say that if you don't like Star Wars, what is wrong with you? It is literally the best cinema franchise in the galaxy. No question about it. And so with that, let's go ahead and bring on my older brother, Mr. Abdurrahman Talib. Ladies and gentlemen, give him a round of applause. And you are on, sir.
All right. Hello, everyone. May the 4th be with you. Live long.
What are you doing?
Isn't Star Wars the one where Albus Dumbledore sends Frodo on a mission to get the ring back to Mordor? I don't know.
Yes.
That's my interpretation or my rendition of that one scene from The Office. If you know, you know.
You do know, yes.
It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me in this celebration of Star Wars Day, where literally millions around the world are fascinated and celebrating this glorious universe, galaxy that was created back in 1977 with the premiere of the original Star Wars, which later became Episode 4, A New Hope. And who knew that it would become what it is today, this universal phenomenon of great storytelling, innovation in cinema with special effects and technology, and being pioneers. So let's just dive right into it and just talk about like our favorite things about Star Wars. What is your favorite thing about Star Wars, Abdurrahman?
Oh, okay. So there's a lot of things to really like about Star Wars. I mean, there's the stories, there's the characters themselves, their development. There's the whole idea of this energy that's flowing through the universe. It's kind of binding it together. They call it the Force. There's the weapons that
it surrounds us.
It surrounds us.
It penetrates us.
Right. Exactly. If you know, you know.
Freaking Family Guy.
Right. Star Wars. Yeah. So I think for me, the thing that really kind of captivated me, I mean, as a young kid watching Star Wars for the very first time, it had to have been the lightsabers. That was the biggest thing for me. The idea that you had this weapon, this basically like this sword made out of light or lasers or whatever you want to call it, which was
this
later
energy.
Which was was later donned or called a lightsaber. It's like, whoa, what is this thing? And it's been like, I mean, you can ask anybody who really likes Star Wars, anybody who really likes it. I think for them, one of the biggest attractions, as far as the younger kids go, it's like the weapons, it's the battles, it's like the word wars is part of the title. You know what I'm saying? So you have to have the right weaponry. And as Obi-Wan Kenobi said, it's an elegant weapon for a more civilized age. It's one of my prized possessions here. I have a number of different lightsabers. This is actually Count Dooku's lightsaber, Darth Tyrannus. From episode,
mine are back here, Vader's and Luke's. Right,
I was there.
I can't do this backwards.
I was there when you bought Vader's, and then you later bought
Yes.
Luke's, right? Yeah,
Yeah, from Fan Day
right.
in here
And
in
that
Dallas.
day that you bought Vader's is the day that I bought Luke's.
Yeah.
And then I think that was actually one of my first ones that I ever bought. I later added a bunch to my collection. I'd gotten some FX Sabers, which for those of you who don't know what that is, that's when like you had like the blade that actually like lights up. There was batteries and all that stuff. It was pretty cool. It made the sounds and whatever, right?
With the
Um,
movement though, I mean
yeah, yeah,
those in
yeah,
themselves. Let's talk about the lightsabers for a second.
yeah.
Those as props were innovative in themselves, but then like as the as a fan, you want to start a collection. You start collecting the different hilts, and then you came out, or rather, the FX lightsabers were made and people bought them, and like they were just really cool, like memorabilia to have. Like what's your
Right.
like you used to have them. What was your experience with them?
So just talking about them as a memorabilia like item, I think something to keep in mind is that I'm not sure beforehand how many things from movies were made available to the public or replicas were made available to the public before Star Wars. I just maybe it's just me and my naivete. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
remember that being the very first thing. Like this was the thing that launched a few different companies. You know, one of them being Master Replicas, who
Yeah.
went in, who partnered up with Lucasfilm to and they did like the 3D scans of the different hilts, and then they had to figure out the technology to put them like to put all the electronics in there to make them light up, to make the blades and then to have like the sounds, a motion sensor for the different kinds of sounds, a clashing sound, a movement sound, the
Yeah.
ignition, the the turning on, turning off of the saber, um, and then like to the point where they got so advanced where you could actually one of the ones that I have is actually has a removable blade, so you can take the blade out, you can just display the hilt by itself. Now, if I compare that to a regular hilt, it is a little bigger, but because they had to fit in all the electronics inside, but that was I think a starting point for me as a young kid, even like not even say kid, but like middle school or so, like that was a dream of mine. I remember when I was
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to graduate high school, one of my mentors actually asked me. He was saying something like, "What do you want as your graduation present?" And I was like, and
Yeah.
I was kind of embarrassed by it because like back then like you couldn't say I loved Star Wars and people would like look at you weird. Like now,
Yeah.
I actually just saw this like just yesterday. I was like just scrolling through Instagram and there was a post that said I celebrated Star Wars Day before it was cool. Like now it's cool to celebrate Star Wars Day. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Star
Yeah.
Wars, yeah. It's like, but you were, I don't know if you're, I mean, we of course welcome you in open arms and stuff, but to say that
Yeah.
you were there from the beginning, I don't know about that. But anyway, like it was for me, like I was kind of embarrassed by it. And I was like, I
It's
want
like
to
you're a
kind of
nerd, you're a geek.
right,
Ew.
right, exactly. So I remember like he asked me like, what would you like or what's something that you want, and I was like, oh, it's this thing called it's an FX something whatever. And he was like, FX, I'm gonna find out what this is. I'm gonna find out. He never did
Mm-hmm.
find out what it was. I ended up getting my own FX Saber once I went to college, and I got the Anakin Skywalker from Episode 3, and then
Yeah.
that was followed shortly by Count Dooku from Episode 3, and then I ended
Mm.
up getting a Mace Windu. I also got a Darth Maul, which I still
Yeah.
own. I still have the Darth Maul, and I still have my Anakin Skywalker FX Sabers.
Do you
Um,
have them handy by any chance?
I don't. So I'm a
Okay.
teacher. For those of you who don't know, I'm a teacher, and so one of the
Yeah.
things that I did in my classroom was I wanted to incorporate all the different things that I liked to make it a place that I would like to be in as a student. And
Yeah.
so part of what that means is that in my classroom I have a section where it's just like a bunch of Star Wars things. I have a few different lightsaber hilts. I have a Mace Windu saber hilt. I have a Luke hilt. I have an Obi Wan hilt that's just kind of there. I also
Eh,
have my Darth
You,
Maul
you keep all these
FX.
at the school?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I also have a few that are here at home. This is one of them, the one that I showed you earlier. This
Count
is a
Dooku's.
an EFX. It's kind of light.
Mm-hmm.
It's not super heavy. This is what's called a stunt saber.
Nice.
Um, this is whatever's used. So this could be broken. It can be replaced very easily, at least on the sets, like not here. But they were
Yeah.
made and they were sold. They were sold like sold. Oh, they used to sell them for like a little over $100 or so. But I mean,
Yeah.
I've spent like a kind of a lot of money on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
So I have
my my sabers weren't cheap either.
so I
I
have an
remember.
EFX. So I have an FX, which is the lighting up and twist the knob and the ignition, the lights and the sounds and all that. I have an FX Darth Maul, which is on my
Mm-hmm.
campus. I
Yeah.
also have an EFX, which is the stunt saber again. and it's a, I mean, you can't really see, but it is a 1-to-1 ratio. And I also have, and that's in the
Wow.
closet right over here. And the other thing that I have, one of my, these are again some of my most like prized possessions that I bought with my own money,
Hmm.
is an Anakin Skywalker Episode 3 limited edition. There's only like 1,000 or 1,500 or something like that of them in the world, and I got one of them.
Wow.
So like, or maybe my number is wrong, but there's a very limited edition, like in terms of how many there are available in the world. And I have one. I've only like it comes like in this huge box where you can display it and all that stuff. And again, that's because for me, the introduction to my love of Star Wars, it started with the weaponry, started with the lightsabers. The fact that you could like wield the sword looking thing. Like I always liked the sword. I just
Yeah.
enjoyed like I feel like as a weapon, it's just it's you go like that's your staple. That's your sword is your staple. And then when they have
It's a true form of there's the art of war to it, and using a saber or using a sword rather, wielding a sword is just it just adds some elegance to it,
yeah,
and then making it sci-fi, making it a
I know the
lightsaber.
fact that that's made out of energy, like, and if it came in contact with your body, it would cut it off. Like,
Yeah,
whoa, you can put it through a
absolutely.
door. Oh, it stops it. Like this is crazy.
Yeah, for sure. So you and I both grew up on Star Wars. How did it start? I mean, I try to remember, but I want to say, and this is just my opinion, I want to say it started from our parents,
Right.
like
So
namely our father
right. So I would
and
say
our
that it's
uncle, and then it just got indoctrinated to us, the
yes,
love
we
of
were.
Star Wars.
Yes, there was a ceremony. We had to read books and all that, right? No,
Yes.
you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember like when I think to our journey into the love of Star Wars, you have to go back to 1977, where our dad was in Kuwait. He was living there in
Yep.
Kuwait. He was 15 years old, and he went to the movie theater and he watched this movie called Al Harb al Kawakib, or Harb al Kawakib, which literally translates to the
Yep.
War of the Stars, which is Star Wars, right? So that's it.
Yeah.
And so like that's where it started. And he's like, I can't believe this and what is going on. And he's like, he used to describe this to us. And for me, in terms of my first introduction to it, the one memory that I have about this, as far as
Yeah.
like this is when I really got into it, was if you remember, I mean, you were there. We used to drive. We used to take these family trips from Dallas to where our aunts and uncles lived in Philadelphia, and we used to
Yeah.
take these long road trips because we're six people, the parents and four kids, and plane tickets are not cheap even back then or whatever. So we used to drive in the car 24 hours, whatever. And what we used to
Yeah.
do is we had one of those like I'm talking about like advanced technology here, right? We had a 13-inch or something or 12-inch TV
I
with a
remember that
built
guy.
with a built-in VCR player, right?
Top of the top
I'm telling you,
notch,
man, you
man.
plug it right into the thingy. What is it called? The thing.
The car wall outlet, whatever,
Yes,
the
the car
adapter.
outlet, whatever it's whatever it's called. So yeah, that's exactly where you would plug it in. I mean, and it was enough power to juice this thing up. And I just remember one of those things like you think about like as a parent now, as a parent, I'm a parent, I have two kids. Anytime my kids are like just needing to take a nap or whatever, and they're just not going down for a nap, one of the things that we like to do is we put them in the car, and then they'll go to sleep usually like that. So imagine a nine,
The
10 year
rocking
old.
of the car, yeah.
Right, right. So imagine a 9 or 10 year old in a car for 24 hours. How many times they're going to fall asleep and wake up, fall asleep and wake up? So that's my first memory of Star Wars was falling asleep and waking up watching Star Wars. Like, what is going on? I really want to. Oh my God, where did this thing go? Oh my, like, and I
We
just keep
had
wake.
wait, we had Star Wars on VHS?
So here's the thing: it didn't actually belong to us. It belonged to one of our family friends, and we borrowed it for the road trip. That's what I
Oh,
remember. Yeah,
I
and
don't
then it
recall.
wasn't until later on that we had our own copies, right? And then there was like
Hmm.
the when DVD kind of came out. No, no, before DVD. Sorry, we had them on VHS. We did that.
Hmm.
I think we had the trilogy on VHS, and then of course, 1999, man.
DVD
No, I was
was born.
no, no, well, sure, but the other thing, the big thing for Star Wars in 1999 was
Prequels.
one, the prequel trilogy came out, and it's like, what is going on? Like, and then you're like, wait, hold on, there was that guy, Darth Vader. Whoa, that's him, and he's a kid. what? How did that happen? What's that story look like for him, and how is that going to work out? And who's this guy? I've never heard of Qui-Gon Jinn, and who is
Yep.
Mace Windu, and what's Naboo, and who's Padme and
And there's
Amidala, and
Yoda.
Yoda? What? Yoda? And then like, okay, like that was fine. There's a devil. There's an actual devil with horns, and he has a lightsaber that's a staff. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah.
So like that, the introduction. I remember when I saw that in the theater. Um, it was me, you, mom, Eamon, our brother. I'm not sure. I don't remember if Noodles was with us. I don't remember. But we went and saw it um, at the theater. It's not that theater anymore.
I'm having some really no. It was United Artists, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
There
Was it
was.
Lowe's or United Artists? I think it was Lowe's.
It's still there, United
It's still there,
Artists.
but it's not called that anymore. But that's regardless. It's the other side.
Okay.
There's a Walmart right next to it. That's what I remember. It's on 75 and like 635. It's right there. Spring
United
Valley,
Artists is
and
still there.
it's called. I
Oh,
thought
right
it's
now. Wait,
yeah, now it's
in
called
Richardson,
yeah.
or in like
What is
Dallas,
that thing
Dallas.
called? No, like it's on the border of Dallas or whatever. It's what is it called?
What's the
That place where
location?
Studio Movie Grill. That's what it's called now.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's in Richardson. It's a Studio
Yeah,
Movie Grill.
but it
There
used to
is
be a
the
Lowe's. It used to be a Lowe's
yeah,
theaters.
yes, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, white
That
sign with
that
the
move.
red things coming up. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
right.
Oh my God, my memory.
So that was actually the first movie that I can remember watching twice in the theater. I watched it as a family with us, and
Yeah,
then I ended up getting tickets to like any two free movie tickets to a United Artists actually, like you said.
yeah.
And I took Amen and we went and saw episode one again on our own one day, and it just
Ooh,
like it was just like a cool thing. Yeah, I think
yeah.
you had no interest. I don't know what it was. Maybe
I
mom
mean,
didn't want you to go. I don't know.
1999. I was 8 years old, and so
Yeah,
I
there's
didn't.
that.
It didn't really click until
Sure.
in my later years that Star Wars was just something that became beloved to me, just as a story, a legacy, um, and of course, uh, being in the pre-film major when I was in college, like it was just like, wow, these are turning points in cinema history, right?
Hmm.
When the original trilogy came out, right, number 4, 5, and 6, the advancements of technology, pushing special effects, and then the crazy part is that when George Lucas, right, went back to the originals to enhance them again and again and again, right, just
Hmm.
to give it, because the ideas that he had, the technology didn't exist, right?
Right.
And so when it was available, he went back and revisited the editing room for those films to make it the way that he had envisioned it all those
Which
years
wasn't
ago.
which didn't exactly sit well with a whole lot of the
No,
fan base either. They're like, oh, George Lucas is the mastermind behind all this greatness, but he's also the mastermind behind all this horribleness. What did you do to my beloved thing?
my childhood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, so
Han
who
shot
is
first.
Han shot first?
Han shot
So
before he had
who?
this.
So who is your ultimate favorite character in the entire saga? I'm talking about original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and then the unfortunate last trilogy. Who is your favorite? Who is your favorite
How
character?
dare you? Mm,
We'll talk about that a little bit later.
okay. Favorite character? God, it's so. I guess the reason I was hung up on it for a second was because I was thinking, what character was in all nine movies? Huh. Just had that.
I mean, if you
Like
really
real
think
quick.
about
I
it,
know, real quick or whatever.
so is Luke Skywalker and Leia. If you think about it,
Are you saying that Luke and Leia existed inside their mother when she was 14 years old? Technically, she did. They did.
and
Okay, because you don't go into the anatomy of all this, but okay, okay, weirdo.
so who's your favorite
Okay,
character?
favorite character. Golly, there's so many good ones. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay, so my favorite character, it has to be, yeah, it has to be Anakin Skywalker. It has to be.
that's what I'm talking about. Why?
Oh God.
Is
What?
it because of his character development? Is it because of
Okay,
all
so it's
the
a lot.
instances that have happened in his life? Is it because he was the prophesized um, one to bring balance to
Okay.
the force? What
Hmm.
was it?
Okay, so the story revolves around his rise and fall, right? His so like I remember a long time ago, our old brother
In a
Eamon gave
galaxy
us
far, far away.
right, right, right. Yeah, I figured at some point I would say that, and bam, you got it. Okay, so I mean, out of our siblings, I think Eamon is the one that is most into Shakespeare, the one that can probably like recite Shakespeare kind of off the top of his head, whatever. And something that we talked about is as somebody who also appreciates many of his works. We talked about if you were to look at episodes one through six, right, and if Shakespeare had written one through six, what he would have called it was the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker, or that the
Mm-hmm.
rise and fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. So you see him as this young boy who's already like has something about him that makes him so special, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he is in a situation because he was a slave, and he was a slave not just anywhere, but in the Outer Rim. He was not able to be, brought up in a traditional, you know, manner, the way that the Jedi used to like they used to like recruit people basically or whatever. Used to
Yeah.
snatch them up, hide your kids, hide your wives, kind of thing. But like, no, we sense that this person is, has a high midichlorian count. They're very force sensitive, whatever the case may be, and we want to
Yeah.
see where this goes because they could serve a greater purpose here. So
Mm-hmm.
he is exempt from that, and all of a sudden, by chance, they say by the will of the force, right?
By the will
That
of
that
God. I mean, the Force. Yes. Yes.
right, right. And so, I mean, there is a spirituality like element, huge
We
with
can
that, of
connect
course,
that. Yes.
right? And
But
even
go
to the
on.
point where they actually say the words like you're the like in episode four, Tarkin actually says to Vader when he senses Obi-Wan, he's like, "You're the only one that's left of that religion." He actually says the word religion,
Yes, he does.
which is interesting. Anyway, going back, so like he's left out of that. He doesn't have that opportunity to have that like to grow up in the Jedi temple, to be trained as a collective, and then to be taken as an apprentice somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has to go an alternate route. So his upbringing uh, into becoming a Jedi was not a standard upbringing, if you would. Like if you look at his master Obi-Wan,
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is a great Jedi in his own right, he is your I don't want to say it like this because I don't want to make it sound like negative for him, but he is somebody who is like who was brought up in the temple. He was taken as an apprentice. He went through the whole thing. He went through the
He was a
trials.
traditional
He's your
student of the
traditional
Jedi.
student, exactly. He's your typical Jedi, in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that the way that he was raised as a Jedi and in the temple and learning about the Force and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, versus Anakin. Very different approach in how they were raised as Jedi, right? So then
Mm-hmm.
at the same, so he is, and one of the reasons that they mention this, they take them at such a young age because they don't want them to have worldly attachments, right? Because attachment leads to jealousy, and that's the shadow of greed. That's what Yoda tells Anakin in Episode 3 as he starts having those visions of his wife, of his wife
Mm-hmm.
dying in child labor. And so um, he doesn't have
So
a
real quick,
traditional
real quick,
upbringing. Go ahead.
real quick. So let me ask this: like, just since we're in the beginning of Anakin's journey, right? Um, Qui Gon. Now, this is not explored so much in the cinema universe, right, of Star Wars, but it is discussed like through graphic novel and other forms, right? Talking about Star Wars, but Qui Gon knew something about Anakin
Hmm.
that Yoda didn't see, correct?
So I think the fact that he was where he was, the fact that Anakin lived on a planet that was in the Outer Rim, which was so far away from the reaches of the Republic, he didn't live in a place where the Jedi could just sense him, right? They couldn't
Mm-hmm.
just sense his presence or whatever. And had it not been for the fact of all those different events that had to transpire for them to land on to end up on Tatooine, who knows what would have happened, right?
Right.
And so he describes it when he goes to the Jedi Temple to report on their findings, the fact that he encountered somebody who had a lightsaber, who was fighting him in a Jedi like manner. He had a red blade, which is typical of the Sith, which
Right.
is also like they have the cracked, the synthetic kyber crystals and all that stuff. This is very alarming because they haven't been the Sith in the Jedi's mind has been extinct for so long. But he's like, I need to report this to the Council. While he's there, he's like, I felt a vergence in the Force. And they're like, what, like in a person? He's like, yes, in a small boy, and I want to see him tested because there's something about him. The fact that he can pod race, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. He's the only human that can do it.
Right.
Right? He has the reflexes to be able to do that, which means that he can almost sense the things that are about to happen, which is very reminiscent of force sensitive individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a huge thing. So I don't want to say that he felt it and Yoda didn't, but I would say that if Yoda was there, I'm sure he would have felt it too. It just so
Right.
happened to be like a matter
But
of chance almost.
I think what I was trying to say was like Qui-Gon had more insight about Anakin's
Mm,
role in the balance of the Force.
sure. And I think so. I think part of that has to do with the fact that so it's not like you said. It's not actually talked about in it's not talked about that much. There's a line in episode one where it kind of shows that Qui-Gon is a rebel,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think the line is like Obi-Wan said, if you would follow the code, then you would be on the council, meaning that he has the wisdom that's there, he has the expertise, he has the knowledge about the Force, and
Yeah.
he has, like I said, the wisdom to kind of make those decisions about, what the council or whatever they need to talk about. And
Mm-hmm.
so, because he doesn't follow the code 100%, that's why he's not on the council. And when he said something about Anakin, I mean, Yoda had some hesitations, right?
Right.
He said that to Obi-Wan after Qui-Gon's death. He said that like that he may be the chosen one, right? But I have a grave danger I sense in his training. Like, he's very concerned about the way he's going to be raised or going to be trained. Number one,
Mm-hmm.
he's a brand new Jedi. He's a
Yeah.
brand new knight. You're gonna give him
Yeah.
to Obi-Wan to train him, and he's a brand new knight. Sure, he's whatever 20. I think he was 25 years old if I'm remembering things right. But I mean, he's 25 years old and he's looking after a 9-year old. So
Mm-hmm.
like, it's a huge responsibility, an undertaking that's
Yep.
really, really like it's huge. And then the fact that you have somebody who like Anakin, somebody like he's training somebody like Anakin who has these innate abilities that maybe Obi-Wan doesn't quite have yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that dynamic is a whole other thing. That's one of the reasons I also like Anakin's because he has these abilities that his peers around him don't have. He's like, I mean, you can argue very like and without like a shadow of a doubt. If you look at episode two and even in episode three, who's the better fighter? Anakin is.
Mm-hmm.
If you just talking about skills with a lightsaber, Anakin's the better fighter. What caught him, I mean, what was his demise in episode three, and there are videos, plethora of videos all over the internet that talk about this. It was
Mm-hmm.
like the fact that his arrogance that was there. Obi-Wan
Yeah.
literally had a high ground. You
Yeah.
know, the move that he made was actually very reminiscent of the move that Obi-Wan did against Darth Maul, if
Right.
you think about that. And then what did he? So then Obi-Wan did the same move that he used against Darth Maul. He used it against Anakin. Anakin was almost taunting him like you underestimate my power, right? He's a
Yeah.
super conflicted character because he has all the stuff, and he has nobody to turn to. Nobody can understand him because he has
Yep.
these powers, these abilities that nobody else around him has. The one person that he can go to that can talk to that he feels that can understand him is he's the bad guy. Like, hello, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, they're just. Oof, oof.
It's
I
great
kind of went off on
story.
like a crazy tangent
But
there.
no, no.
I
I
know I
mean,
did.
you brought up some great points, and I think it's like the lessons to learn from Star Wars. You know, in terms of like a youngster who is following this person's journey, right? The Skywalker saga, right? It goes from Anakin, and then it passes on to Luke, and then this person out of nowhere has the ability to use the Force, which later reveals is a Palpatine. Now, let me ask you this: Who is who who claims to be the rise of Skywalker? Is it Ben or is it Rey?
So who is the rise of Skywalker? That title, who's it talking about?
Yes,
Who?
because I feel like it's a cheap shot that, oh, I'm Rey came out victorious, then I'm just gonna adopt the Skywalker last name just
Mm-hmm.
because I want to be part of the legacy. Yay! When she didn't
So,
necessarily quote unquote earn
and
it.
I know that that was a big dividing point among fans. They were like, "Ooh, this like the fact that she claimed the Skywalker name." There was something I just saw just yesterday, and they were like, it was on Twitter. Like somebody's like, "I edited something. I want to see what y'all think about this." And they
Yeah,
basically edited the last couple like minutes of Rise of Skywalker, and instead of when that woman asked Rey at the end, when she said, "You know, there hasn't been somebody here for so long. What's your name? Who are you?" And she
yeah.
says, "I'm Ray." And in the original movie, she's like, "I'm Ray." And she's like, "Ray who?" And then she looks off in the distance. And then you see Leia and Luke are right there. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm a Skywalker. I'm Ray Skywalker." Right?
Mm-hmm.
The person edited the video and or the movie. And what they did was they took out some of that in between when the lady asked, you know, "Who are you?" Instead of her saying, "I'm Ray," and it's just, "Ray who?" Or "Ray, what's your surname or what's your last name?" Instead of that, it just said, the lady said, "What's your name?" And then she kind of looked off in the distance and she saw them, and then she said, "I'm Ray Skywalker," like that. And I know it doesn't sound like much, but for me, I was like, that's a little bit better. I mean, so the thing is, it's like you can't. What is it like? The thing that I kind of enjoyed about it was that there was a message there that it doesn't matter what your past is, you can always make your own future, right? So
True.
she came from a line of this
Dirt
really
bags.
tyrannical person who
Yeah.
you know who was the master of three. Yeah, do it.
Do it.
He was the master of three Sith lords. Like
Yeah.
he was, and he constructed this whole thing, this this plot to destroy the Jedi and the Republic and all that. Like that this person is straight up evil, man. Like this, right?
Yep. He's just
And
one
she's
bad
like,
dude.
right. And so it's not unlike, if you would just hang on for a second, it's not unlike Luke. She's
Mm-hmm.
not unlike Luke in that way. Because if you think about where Luke comes from and where Leia comes from, where do they come from? They are direct descendants of Darth
Darth
Vader,
Vader.
which most people, when they think of the Empire, that's who they think of. They don't think about Palpatine. They don't think about the Emperor. Because when it comes to the Emperor's whims and what he wants done,
Yeah.
who's the person that goes in and forces everything?
He gets
Vader
it
does.
done. Right.
Right.
He Palpatine was holding the strings, the puppeteer, and Vader was the
You are my little
he was the
puppet, and I am your
executor,
puppet master.
and he just did his job, and he did it well,
Right. And
and
so
he was amazing
what I
at
was
it.
gonna say, if you let me, what I was trying to say is that so Luke and Rey are similar in that they both have this past that is kind of dark. Right now,
Yeah.
obviously, like you want to compare Vader to Palpatine, you can't. Like Palpatine is so much worse. Like Vader
Mm-hmm.
was somebody who was, like I said, he had all that emotion. He couldn't let go of certain things. He's trying to be human, but he's also not. He's fighting. He's constantly being told to fight against his feelings that
Mm-hmm.
he has, his not feelings, his emotions. I want to say emotions and not feelings because they can be different. They can also mean the same thing. But I want to just make a distinction between it because a Jedi feels versus a Jedi has emotion. Right? A Jedi should not
Yes.
have emotion, but a Jedi has feelings and that they sense things. Right?
Yeah.
If that, I mean, in the traditional sense of the word feeling, right? And so he's constantly has this battle with himself. That's which is why he's my favorite character. A character
Mm-hmm.
that always has this like continuous struggle with himself is always going to be an appealing character. That's why that's why Kylo Ren was such an interesting character because he himself was somebody that was raised, you know, and brought up being a force sensitive person,
Mm-hmm.
being somebody from the lineage of Darth Vader, being somebody who was that powerful, but also having this conflict within him. because he has that calling to the dark side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the back and forth that he has, over the course of the three movies, and then you see a little bit before, what happened while he was still in the temple of the new Jedi Order,
Right.
that Luke had started after the events of Episode 6. It's just, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's really really interesting.
Right. I mean, I think the title rightfully goes to Ben, right? Kylo Ren, to be the rise of Skywalker because you saw him turn, right?
You
Coming
literally saw him
to
rise out of a hole.
rise out of a
He
hole,
rose, right. He rose
right
into
out
a
of the cracks
Skywalker.
to become a Skywalker, right? To
Right.
fulfill his destiny,
To
if you
become his
will.
true self again, yeah.
Right. Um, but again, this is gonna maybe trigger people. I don't know. But in my opinion, I think Star Wars, just in general, should have stopped at episode 6 and leave it at that. Right. But of course, there was the novels that were coming out, the graphic novels as well. It's
Which they
continuing
call
the
the extended
story.
universe, right?
Right. That like, oh, there
Which a
has to
lot
be
of people
more.
liked. A lot of people liked it. They wanted
Right.
to continue it.
But when Disney took the reins,
Oh boy.
it became something else. When I was watching episode 7 for the first time, I told myself, this is not Star Wars. It's missing the essence of Star Wars.
What is
It
the
was
essence of Star Wars?
so I think the look and feel, right, of the universe, yeah, like you take the style of J.J. Abrams, right? Lens flares everywhere, and it looked too modern, whereas the first 6 films had the same consistency in terms of visual appeal, right? It wasn't crazy camera moves. It wasn't really shallow depth of field. Like in terms of just cinematography alone.
So you're talking about like the technical aspect of it.
Correct. Like the way it was shot was very different in terms of style versus the first 6 films, right? These last 3 of the Star Wars trilogy, saga, they just had a completely new take, right? They made it more modern looking in terms of filming techniques, and that kind of threw me off, right? Because that's not the Star Wars universe that we know. So that was one thing, and then they were trying to fill in the gaps, or trying to like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, it was just, to me, it did not grasp the essence of Star Wars. It was just like, I felt like it was just fan-made stuff in the name of Star Wars with the official title on it. That's just me. What do you think?
I think this is where you and I disagree. That's what I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of, once The Force Awakens came out, there was a lot of like immediate comparisons. Oh my God, this is just like A New Hope, but just
Yeah.
more modern, right? Which, it's
I
funny
I felt like Ben could have had a much, or rather, Kylo Ren could have had a much more serious personality instead of just like the emo kid, in high school.
let me ask you a question. How different was he from Anakin in Episode 3?
Anakin was married and had kids on the way.
Come on, man.
I feel like I just feel like he like Kylo
Episode 2,
had.
like,
I feel like Kylo had
how was
a much more immature approach.
Yeah,
That's why.
how was Anakin in Episode 2? And hear me out here.
Mm-hmm.
How was Anakin in Episode 2 into 3? 2 and 3. Think about him as one big thing. His character in Episode 2 and 3. And think about it specifically in terms of how was he whenever he was with Padme?
He was much more emotional.
Huh.
But who did Kylo Ren have? He was just
he
being the
doesn't-
kid
right.
that lashed out because he had all these. I get it. I understand. It just, to me, it didn't seem like original. Like that story was already told with his grandfather, right? With the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker. right?
But isn't that kind of like the point?
History repeats itself.
Partly, right?
I do see that, and it's making sense. To me, it just seemed like I don't know how to articulate it, but there's something about the last three films of Star Wars, the reboot, if you will, of Star Wars, with the new generation of young audiences, right, to get them involved with the Star Wars franchise, and they just want to make it relevant to them, and so I understand it. I just feel like for the older folks who grew up on the original trilogy and then the prequels, it was just like a new take, and like it's disturbing. It makes us uncomfortable. At least it makes me uncomfortable. I know you're older, but
It's disturbing. It makes it uncomfortable. But I love Star Wars.
I do love Star Wars. Yeah.
Okay, well, Star Wars is all of it.
So love all of it, or go home.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can like okay, but okay. So here's something that I wanted to ask you early on, as you were saying things about like, I'm not like a huge fan or whatever of the trilogy, the sequel trilogy. When you left the theater, did you think to yourself, I enjoyed myself while I was watching the movie? That's the question you have to ask yourself.
I did not. I was watching it, and I was watching it comedy and things like that. Sorry, I was having some issues over here with the connection. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, people were saying like it was a comedy. Don't go watch it. It was just like a laughable thing. It wasn't serious enough to be Star Wars. It wasn't cool enough to be Star Wars. There was just a lot of dead time. Like it was hard for the story to move along, and so they were just trying to fill it in. I know the logistics of it were hard because Carrie Fisher passed away while filming, so they had to, or no, it wasn't before they filmed the last. So then they had to reuse old footage, and they had to make that fit in there. And I understand the struggle of that and trying to make the story work. I will say, like the last
also,
bit.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
You look at like okay, I don't like using Rotten Tomatoes as a thing here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go ahead and use it. Like I think so. Episode 7 had like a 90% plus. I forget what the actual percentage was. It was in the low 90s maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then The Last Jedi also had in the low 90s. And then what's it called? Rise of Skywalker had like a 50 something percent, which it hadn't had something that low since episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of interesting to me. So it seemed like a lot of people, or the majority of Star Wars fans, enjoyed what's it called? The Force Awakens. They enjoyed it. Now, do they have their qualms with it? Some of them did, yeah, sure. But for the most part, everyone's like, yeah, we like this. This is good.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me back of like what was when I think to like Star Wars. This is kind of what I think about, and this is a new take on it. Some new characters with some interesting character development there. Okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Then Last Jedi comes around, and now you have a new director, Rian Johnson, who, if you look at a lot of his other movies, have a lot of twists and turns in them, and he wanted to bring some of those twists and turns into Star Wars. And I feel, am one of the few people who liked all the movies. I enjoyed all of them, and I have some that I like less than others.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's some people out there who call themselves like they're hardcore Star Wars fans, and they'll say, "I hate The Last Jedi. I hated it. Like I hated it, detested blah 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 blah." Like even I feel like from the prequel trilogies, number one is by and far the weakest of the three, right? But there are a lot of really good things in episode 1. Like like almost every scene with Qui-Gon in it, Liam Neeson is amazing. Like it's great. He brings a certain presence. You see the what's it called, the connection that he has, the chemistry that he has with Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then you see like the foundation start to build up for this thing that's going.
That's what it is. It's a solid foundation. That's where it's starting from.
And then when you talk to hardcore Star Wars fans, those who grew up on 4, 5, and 6, and you ask them about Episode 2, they'll say, "Oh, I hate it. I hate sand. It's everywhere. But they will literally refer to one scene from the whole movie, which ruined the movie for them. She's like, I
Right.
cannot watch this movie. Although I can't. And I watched it not that long ago because Disney Plus. So whatever. Anyway, because
So,
so
okay, real quick, I need to interject just to real quickly say that, I mean, yes, it is Star Wars Day, and I think it was really awesome of Disney to put the complete saga, right, on Disney Plus, and they made it available on Star Wars Day. So kudos to Disney for doing that.
yeah,
Anyway, go
they
on.
watch your stuff anyway.
Yes, they
Anyway,
do.
right, of course. Yes. We love you, Disney. Everything's great. Okay. Anyway, so um I remember when I was first like going through um all the stuff they had for Star Wars, like I don't know, have you watched The Mandalorian yet?
No.
Stop what you're doing. We're gonna end the live stream right now. You're gonna go watch The Mandalorian, okay? No,
No.
not really. But you do need to watch it. It's very well done. Um and there's like just really just it's good. It's really good. I don't want to get into it, but it's really good. Okay. Anyway,
Okay.
so after I watched it, I was like looking around to see what else do they have that's Star related, and I was like, obviously they have the movies, but I was like, yeah, I have them on Blu-ray, like whatever. But then I see that they're available in 4K, and I was like, whoa, hold on a second.
Yep.
I kind of want to watch this in 4K. Let's watch it in 4K. So I started watching some of this stuff in 4K, and I was like, huh. So I hadn't watched episode two from beginning to end in a very, 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 very long time.
Yeah.
But I started going through it, and I was like, there's a lot of really good stuff in episode two. There's like this whole mystery. There's an assassination attempt on somebody. Where did this stuff
Yeah.
come from? Who put the order in for the clones? And all these little pieces are moving. One
Yeah.
thing that you said early on, and it kind of like irked me, and I have to say something. You were like, as big as a Star Wars fan that I am, I do not think that it is the best franchise out there, the best movie franchise out there. That title only goes to, and you know better, it goes to the Lord of the Rings. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because there's a line in The Return of the King. I know on Star Wars they were talking about every time about Lord of the Rings. There's a line in Lord of the
And
Rings.
that's enough of that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just kidding. Go on.
So there's a line in Lord of the Rings where Gandalf, in the movies at least, I never read the books, but in the movies where Gandalf is talking to, I always have to remember which. He's talking to Pippin. He's talking to Pippin.
Hmm.
Right? Peregrine Took, fool of a Took. He's talking to Pippin, and he says something like, "The board is set, the pieces are moving." Right? He's talking as
Hmm.
if like this whole thing that's going on in Middle Earth is a big chess game.
Yeah.
So in episode one, the board was set. In episode two, the pieces started moving, and like the last move was check,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when the Clone Wars started on Geonosis, right? With
Yeah.
the Jedi all coming together to rescue Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme,
Yeah.
and then you had the clone troopers come in and all that and all of that entailed. So that was the first check move, and then of course you have all the Clone Wars,
Yeah.
and all that. So as I'm watching episode two, I'm like, there's a lot of really good stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like some of the chemistry between Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman could have been better. I feel like the dialogue could have definitely been better, but at the same time, here's the deal. I'm going to bring it back to something that I mentioned that a lot of people also mention on YouTube when they talk about Anakin, is that he sounds monotonous. He sounds like a robot. Well, he kind of like, again, he has his emotions,
Internal
and then he has,
conflicts.
right, he has his emotions as a person, and then he has his feelings as a Jedi, what he's supposed to be versus what he is, and they're
Mm-hmm.
constantly going back and forth. And he has nobody that he can talk to because everyone's like, "Oh, he's the chosen one. Oh, he's the chosen one. Oh, he." So now he has a thing to live up to. I'm the chosen one. Even
Yeah.
to the point where, in one of what I feel like is one of his best scenes in Star Wars, when Hayden Christensen talks to Natalie Portman in episode two, right after he buries his mom, or right after he brings his mom back, and he's
Mm-hmm.
talking about what he did to the Sand People, right?
Yeah.
And
I
and
killed
he
them.
kind of and right,
I
and he
killed
kind of
them all.
he
Yeah.
breaks down, right? He breaks down, and then Natalie Portman's like, to be angry is to be human, and his response was, "I'm a Jedi. I know I'm better than
Better than
this,
this. Yeah.
right?" And then he kind of like, she keeps like, just no, it's okay, it's okay. And then he finally, like, he really breaks down because
Consoling
again,
him. Yeah.
it's a perfect that scene, I feel, is a perfect glimpse into who he is as a character. He is somebody that has this power, doesn't know what to
Right.
do with half of it because people are kind of holding him back, and he even says in that
It's
scene,
Obi-Wan's
he's
fault.
holding
He's
me back.
jealous. Yeah.
He's holding me back, and all that stuff, because he hears about things, and unfortunately, the movie didn't go into some of the stuff that um that some of the fans know about and some of the graphic novels talk about right now, which
Hmm.
is there is some stuff out there in the Star Wars universe that talk about things like the preservation of life. Something that was introduced in the Rise of Skywalker was the fact that you could heal somebody using the Force,
Right.
right? And so, how come he wasn't taught that? If he was taught that, in his eyes, his mom would have lived. In his
Hmm.
eyes, if he was taught that, if he was worthy enough to be taught that, then he wouldn't
Hmm.
have to worry about when his wife got pregnant.
Right.
There's a lot of different things. Also, like there's a guy out on if you guys are watching on YouTube, there's a guy Star Wars theory, great channel, check it out, really great. He
I
talks about
messaged
stuff.
him on Instagram hoping that he could do this episode of Real Time with me, but he didn't get back to me. But it's okay.
Yeah, dude's busy. He's a busy guy. Mad props to you, man. Anyway,
Yeah.
he talks about this, and one of the things that he talked about, he has a video. He said, "What if Mace Windu trained Anakin Skywalker?"
Yeah. Samuel
And
Jackson.
what? Man, let me tell you, what would be coming out of Anakin's mouth.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
You're on this council, and we do grant you the rank of master. That's what I'm talking about, mother.
Hey yo. My
I
Jedi.
feel like I got like so far off. I
Yeah.
don't even remember what we were talking about actually.
Um, I can't remember either. But something that I do, I guess, I hold myself to this, and I don't know why, but I think it's like, oh, I'm a fan. Let me watch the new films that came out in the last few years, right? To complete the trilogy with the same lens that I've watched all the Star Wars films with. So there was these great expectations to come from it, and then when they weren't met, there
Sure,
was it,
and
it
I think
felt
that
it
right.
came with disappointment, and I'm starting to understand, like, maybe I need to watch them again for as they are to complete the story, right? In the name of Star Wars, in the name of completing the saga, let me watch it with those lenses and see if it makes more sense.
So I think, and here's the thing: there is a very subliminal message. I don't know how many people caught this. At least that's my interpretation of it. In the Last Jedi, you were talking. So you just talked about you had your own expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want you to think about this for just a second. Episode 6 happens, right? We know that episode 7 happens many years after episode 6. One thing that fans were starting to talk about right at the get go was, oh man, I can't wait to see Luke. And he started the Jedi Academy, the new Jedi Order, and what's
Yep.
that look like? And you didn't see him until the last 2 minutes, and he
Right.
didn't say a word, right? And people have been thinking about this and talking about this guy Luke that was off in the distance, like he became like a legend in
Right.
his
This
own
great
right.
warrior. Yeah.
Right. And then you see him, and the very first time you see him in The Last Jedi, right, which I don't agree with what he did, but the message behind what he did I do agree with. So Rey gives the lightsaber to Luke, and he's like,
He
he throws
throws
it
it.
away. He throws it like, and it was like, wait, hold on, what? What was that? What are you doing there, buddy? Right? It was not becoming of Luke. At least what we imagined Luke to be like, because we had our own expectations of this great Jedi Master,
Yeah.
right? And so the subliminal message was that you had people have in their minds a certain expectation, a certain whatever, and then it's not, and maybe it's not always what it comes out to be, or whatever what it's meant to be. It doesn't
Yeah.
always pan out that way. And so, like, in and of itself, it was kind of like Last Saturday was kind of saying, hey fans, by the way, this guy Luke, who you hold as fans on a pedestal, just like in the story the galaxy held him up to a pedestal, he's not the guy that he used to be. A lot
Right.
of things have changed.
Yep.
Things have changed. He has made mistakes. a lot of mistakes. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that Yoda talked about in The Last Jedi, which as a teacher, I really love this. He
In the
talked
Last
about
Jedi,
in The Last Jedi, Yoda talked to him. Do you remember that Yoda was in The Last Jedi, right? You know that,
I
right?
almost forgot number 8. Honestly,
Okay,
I need
so
to
there's a point.
rewatch.
So there's a point where after Rey leaves the island, she does like some training with Luke, and then she like is like, I need to leave, whatever. Not too different from like Episode 5 with Luke going to Yoda and all that. You
Yeah,
know, and he has like the scrolls of the Jedi or whatever, and then all of a sudden like everything like lights on fire and all this crazy shit, trying to figure it all out.
yeah,
Then you hear Yoda, and he's like, "Oh, Skywalker, how I have missed you." And like, oh
yeah,
my God, Yoda's in it. Like that's cool. Yoda's there, right? And so then he talks to Luke, and he says something like, and I don't remember the exact words, but he said something like, "The greatest teacher failure is," or something like that. Failure is the greatest teacher. He goes, when I told you to pass on what you learned, I meant everything. Pass on your failure too. You
mm-hmm.
know, you want to teach people, you want to show people what you've done wrong so that they can maybe avoid that mistake in the future. So, like I said, as a teacher, I applaud that line. I really like that line, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's also something that there I think this is what it comes down to. A lot of people who like Star Wars or who say they're part of the Star Wars fandom or whatever, they say,
Yeah,
yeah, we love the movies. And they may say, oh, I hated that movie. But regardless, in every single movie, there are going to be, even the person who says, I hated that movie, there's going to be parts of it that they liked. There's going to be
yeah,
little gems throughout. Right? So, like,
right.
so like you and I, let's talk about this real quick. Episode 1. What's the
Mm-hmm.
one thing from episode 1 that everybody hates?
Um, it dragged, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm characters. Character.
Uh, Jar Jar.
Jar Jar. Nobody likes Jar Jar. But did he serve a
Jar Jar
purpose?
Jar Binks. Yes,
He did. When?
at the battle.
Episode 2. His
Oh, oh,
real
right, right, right.
purpose. His real purpose got served in episode 2
When he
when
was senator, yeah,
he was the senator, like the ambassador or whatever for Naboo,
yeah.
and he's like, I'm gonna put forward this. Let's make a clone army to
That's
counter
his
whatever's going on.
only thing.
Right.
That was his
Right.
only role.
Right. No, but so like that. So even when he did it, he was still like this blubbering idiot, like whatever. But that's his character.
Yeah.
That's who he is, right?
Sorry, Ahmed Best.
Yeah, it's not his fault. That's how the character was written, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, you talk about other things that happen, other like stuff. So like I said, like even like within episode 2, there is, like I said, that dialogue that's between Anakin and Padme, right? Whenever they're talking, Padme,
Panababe, Panabear, whatever the
whatever,
hell her name is.
whatever her name was, right?
Oh, jeez, he's crying.
Hey,
Hey, come
get
on.
your asthmatic back here. Oh God, what the hell's an aluminum falcon?
Falcon. If y'all don't know what we're talking about, y'all are not true Star Wars fans. Robot Chicken, they did a Star
Robot
Wars
chicken.
special.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Anyway,
episode 2, the dialogue between Anakin and
even
Padme.
even the dialogue, a lot of people say, "Oh, it's cringeworthy." Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it may be. Yeah, I agree. There's some of that I'm like, it could have been better for sure. It could have been better.
Yeah.
However, do you hate the movie as a whole? Or so
No.
there was some parts of like they introduce you to this thing that they brought back from 1977, the Clone Wars.
Yep.
You fought in the Clone Wars? Yes.
So this is
It was
that's
a
what made it
bad
amazing. Yeah, like to see it play out. Like that's the
Right.
genius in the writing. I think that George captured was that he didn't know where this was semi going per se, but then for it to come make a full circle and then come back around and to see, because you know what happens, but to see it play out is just like another dimension of awe. You know, like
Yeah.
you hear the stories, but then you see the story in front of you as it's being
And
revealed.
that's the whole point. That's the whole point. In fact, like one of the things that one of the like little short fan like edits that came out a few years ago.
I remember.
Yes, before the dark times. Big shout out to the person, the creator of that. I mean, obviously the footage is all from Lucasfilm and all that, but the edit
That
that he
was
made there,
well done. So
like,
well done.
whoa! Because you see him talking. It's Obi-Wan talking to Luke. It's in Episode 4, and they're talking about Anakin, and they're talking about the Clone Wars, and you see these like flashbacks to the Clone Wars and you see what happened. Then
Yep.
you see like the story that he tells, the hesitation that he had when he's like, "What happened to my father? How did my father die?" And he's like, if you want to be like,
Yeah.
"Well, kid, let me tell you something. Your father's actually not dead. He's
Yeah.
actually Darth Vader." Like, he could have just said that, right? But instead he said, a young Jedi named Darth Vader, who used to be a pupil, or he was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights.
What a
He
what a
betrayed he
dialogue, man.
he betrayed and murdered your father. And then
Oof.
in episode 6, he comes back and said, Obi-Wan, you told me that Darth Vader, I don't know what Darth Vader, Darth Vader.
Hey, Dorothy.
You'll never know who
No
it is.
one.
You
Darth
don't know what that is.
Vader. The Muppet special.
The Muppet special.
Yeah.
Okay. So you told me that Darth Vader betrayed and murdered my father. It's like, your father? Your father was seduced by the dark side of the Force. And when he did that, blah, blah, blah.
So you lied.
What I told you was true from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view? You mother-loving Force.
A certain point of view is, hey, I stole that. Like, you stole that. No, I just didn't pay for it. That's his
That's perspective.
View, right?
It's always about perspective.
Your face with that perspective.
Yeah.
But anyway, the reason I brought this up is because there are gems. Even with somebody who says they walk out of the movie like, I hate it, there's not gonna be like some part that they didn't enjoy. There's not gonna, like, it's impossible to say like I hated every second of the movie. Like, there's gonna be some part that you enjoyed. So I'm gonna go back to that question that I asked you a long time ago. Mm-hmm. There were things that you enjoyed about the sequel trilogy.
Yes, the little nod of the cap is what the phrase is. I don't know. They what's the word? I cannot think of it. But basically, there's a lot of nostalgia, right? That's like hinted, right? And so if you know the story, you're a fan, you get it, right? So those were plentiful inside, and that made me, smile. Like, okay.
So let me throw one more thing out there. You were talking about expectations and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you were talking about that this is the story that we grew up with. Yeah. Well, you grew up, right? And as you grew up, you are influenced by other things that you see, and you're like, oh, here's how and you as a filmmaker, right? You yourself, you make these short movies, you do a lot of this stuff. That's your job, right?
Yeah.
You think of this. I know that you come at this and you're like, from a technical perspective, here's what I would have done, and then from a storytelling perspective, here's what I would have done, and so you also have that lens to look through. So you are looking at this not just from Mustafa, the
spectator,
the person who, you're not just like some guy I like Star Wars, but you're also Mustafa the filmmaker, you're Mustafa the writer, you're Mustafa the editor, the film editor. So, and then also you have to think about your own experiences, how you've been influenced by other things that you've seen to kind of like to shape your own perspective. And again, I really think we really need to kind of step back for a second
and be a spectator.
We need to be like, why do we go to the movies? Why do we watch movies? It's to be entertained.
And watch a story.
Are
you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Yesterday, Russell Crowe tweeted, actually, just kind of like, that's from Gladiator. He said that it was released in Australia 20 years ago today, or yesterday, something like that. I was like, whoa.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. The Gladiator came out 20 years ago.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Isn't that why you're here?
So I think so something that falls oftentimes, I mean, a lot of times that falls into the same trap is the Transformers movies, right? The Michael Bay Transformers movies, right?
First one was great.
And that's exactly my point. You're going to say the first one was great, and the second one was trash. Third one, what are they doing? Fifth one, let me ask you a question. You
first one was nice, though.
Right? You kept going to watch them.
Because I wanted to see if they do a better job the next time. To live up to my expectations. I know it's a terrible thing. I'll tell you this. This is an issue of mine. Just being in the field, right? As in the profession. So I go in and I come in with a critique eye. I don't go in with the spectator eye. I don't go in to just enjoy the story, enjoy everything. Like, I don't let my mind I don't let myself be immersed, right? Just to
Right.
put it simply.
Hmm.
The first time I did that in a long time was in Man of Steel. And that's why I really enjoyed that movie, because I let myself go and I wasn't thinking about, oh, what's the lens they're using here? Oh, what's the camera move? Oh, what's, like I wasn't trying to pay attention to all those things. I was just trying to pay attention to it as a whole and just shutting off that part of my brain and just watching the film and enjoying it. And that's how I got immersed, right? Then I fell into it, if that makes sense. I entered that world.
Yeah.
The problem is, more often than not, it stays on all the time.
Right. Well, because that's who you are. So
That's just who I am. I
look, hey,
analyze and
stop being yourself. Like when you go to the movies.
right.
But I go back
It's
to like our mutual friend here. Shout out to Faisal real quick. I mean, we had a conversation about this
myself.
years and years ago, right? We had this conversation years and years and years ago, which was, why do you go to the movies? Why do you watch movies? Why do you watch TV? It's so that you can be entertained. Is it
Right.
sometimes silly?
You
Yeah.
escape.
Does it sometimes not make sense? Sure. Does
Yeah.
sometimes stuff look so ridiculous? Yeah, sure. But were you entertained? Yeah. Then shut up and be entertained, man. You can always critique. I mean, obviously, you can critique anything you want to be. You
Yeah.
can critique whatever you want to, and that's your prerogative. You can do that. It's fine. But then,
Right.
like, are you actually happy?
You're absolutely right. And no, you bring up a solid point, and it is a lesson for me to learn, which is that, you know, especially when going to the movies or consuming any sort of media,
Don't
right?
say the word consume or fasting, bro.
Allahu Akbar. Uh, but basically, to keep in mind, like, I need to behave and act like a spectator, right? I don't need to come in as a critic, because my opinion, I could talk about that, but it's not. I mean, but it's not going to really benefit anybody unless I have some credibility, to an extent. So that's why I'm saying, like, it is something for me to learn, and I'm still learning, which is to, when I watch something new, something that is so beloved to me like Star Wars, right? I need to go in with the being a fan, not the filmmaker,
Hmm.
right? And for example, like the last few films that came out in 2019, right? Knives Out, fantastic film. Did you watch it? Amazing movie. Why? Because it was a great story and it was told so well. And again, I'm not saying that as a filmmaker. I'm saying that as a spectator. Like, it was just a really great movie, and I've heard so many great things about it. What's up?
Directed by Ryan Johnson, director of The Last Jedi, by the way.
And there you go. That's what I'm talking. See, that's what I'm saying. So then, another film, Little Women. Yes, it was another rendition of another movie novel, right? A second one, but this one, I mean, I didn't watch the original film, but this one I watched it in the theater, and I got sucked into it. I got emotional. I was starting to feel the character. Like, it hit me, right? It became relatable. Then Joker. Did you watch Joker?
Yes, I did.
I think it was well done. It was, more character driven, and it just, you almost sympathize, but then you hate him at the end, right? Like, it did what a film is supposed to do, which is to have that emotional roller coaster ride, right? You get attached, and then you start going up and down, and like, yes, no, yes, why are you doing that? Why? Like, when you start shouting at the TV, that means it's a good movie. So, so those are
Yeah.
just a few examples of, in recent cinema, that these films help. They really did a great job immersing the audience to really enjoy the art, right, of filmmaking. What are your thoughts on Joker, real quick, just on the little time that we have left?
Right. So Joker, I enjoyed it as a standalone movie. It was really really good. I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff that it brought to the table. We talk about, like, we've talked about this, like, you and I and our brother and our dad. We've
Hmm.
talked about this, the humanizing of something that is evil.
Right.
And why does this happen? Why are there so many stories being told now where, where they try to humanize the evil thing. It's like talking about, for example, like imagine the Lord of the Rings from Sauron's perspective or something like that. Like
That
it's
would
like
be an
it's
interesting
like these
take.
guys just won't do what I want them to do. So here's a ring of power that I'm gonna do. Oh my god, this little human cut off my hand, then I died. Like, and I'm gone for 2,500 years. And I'm like, what's going on? I don't know. It's right. If they would just not hurt me, not kill me, I could just rule Middle Earth the way I want
Come
to.
on, come on,
Right.
man.
So
Um,
we've
yeah,
talked about the humanization of of what are known as traditional like evil characters, and the
yeah,
issue that we take with that, just from a moral perspective, because once you start humanizing anything, whether it's good or bad or whatever, from your
hmm,
perspective, of course, then you can relate to it. Um, and so the thing about the Joker that I enjoyed was the fact that we've never really seen this character in this way before, ever. We've never
correct.
seen him as like somebody who, like, clearly you watch any or you read any graphic novel, any comic book that has a Joker in it, you watch a movie that has a Joker in it, you're gonna be like, this dude's got issues. Like
Right.
he's kind of messed up. You know what I'm saying? Like he's got some issues, right?
Give me a
And
second. I need to take this off. I'm starting to sweat a little bit. Hold on.
oh my god, you don't have a oh oh god oh no, get off camera before you do this. Don't be that person.
Ooh, Lord have mercy.
I told you not to wear it, man. That's why I didn't.
I told you not to call them anymore.
Use your thinking. Use your people gonna die.
Annie? I told you not to call them anymore. Can't say that word.
Right, I'm fast. And so the thing about the joke about Joker was that, like, it was for me like it was almost disturbing.
Right. The emotional
That
roller
and
coaster.
right. And here's the thing: I feel like I mean, for anybody who hasn't watched Joker before, it may want to like cover years or whatever. But there's the part where near the end of the movie where he finally like made it. He's like, "Mama, I made it. I'm on the show now." And that exchange that he has between himself and Robert De Niro, like, and he's talking about how
Wow.
he murdered those guys and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
he's just like, "You think that's okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." And then he asks him that question, "What do you get when?" And I forget what he said exactly. He's like, "But what do you get when all those words?" And he's like, "I don't know." When he goes, "You get what you bleeping deserve." And then boom, right? When he said that, I was like,
Yep.
oh, like I when I was
Very
watching, I was
powerful
like,
dialogue. Very powerful
yes,
dialogue.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think that one of the messages that he's trying to say there is like what do you think is going to happen when you keep doing stuff like when you keep doing what you're doing like this? You
Yeah.
keep pushing down on the person for whatever, for how they are, for how they act, for
When you bully, yeah.
how they right. Like, what do you think? What's going to happen? Eventually, you're going to get what you deserve. That's what's going to happen. Now, I don't agree with what he did,
Karma.
but holy smokes! Like, I mean, you just did not expect that at all.
That was the shocker, right? Like I was watching it and I was like, whoa. First of all,
No,
you shot Robert De Niro in the face.
like, what's wrong with you, man? Joe Pesci got to come out
Second,
there and pitch.
but like again, that was just like a turning point, right? It was just an unexpected turn. You did not,
Yeah,
because you thought always like this buildup was, oh, he's gonna shoot himself, right? He was
yeah.
implying that he was suicidal, but then turned it against himself, or no, turned it to the host, Robert De Niro's character, and then shot him instead, and just
Right,
like,
the
whoa,
fact that, I mean, like, and I think something that's also really important is that they use this movie as a platform to bring up the the serious problem that is mental illness, and the fact that people like to sweep
yeah,
this under the rug, right?
yeah,
And
for sure,
that's like, and that in and of itself was a really like a that was a gutsy move.
yeah,
But the fact that it's somebody like that, it's a character like the Joker, somebody that's so well liked just because of who he is and who he represents, and
hmm,
the, like you were saying, like the nostalgia that comes with when you hear the word Joker, you're like, oh man, the Joker. Like, I
yep,
know this guy. This guy is crazy. This guy, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what he does next.
yeah,
Because of that, they could address these issues, and they could say, you know what, he actually is. He's not just like criminally insane. This guy's got issues he needs to resolve,
yep.
right? And
You
then at the
wouldn't
same time,
understand.
yeah, yeah, that scene that he has, that dialogue between him and the therapist right there, and he talk
Before he
and he
kills her.
And he said something about like the thing about a mental illness is that what is it? What did he say?
It's been a minute, so I don't recall the
Something
quote.
about like you can't see it, which is
Yeah,
yes, you're absolutely right. You can't see it, and people
but
just
it's
expect you just
there.
to be better. Like just be better. Like, okay, I'll just snap my fingers and bam, I'm better now. No, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Right. And at
But
the same time,
anyway,
yeah. Anyway,
go,
anyway.
good, go, go. No, 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 no. Go ahead, go ahead. Finish your
That was
thought.
basically that was it. That was basically it. Like I was gonna say the fact that he had that card where he laughs at all the things like and he's like, I have a disorder,
Right.
right?
I thought that
And the
was
fact
kind of cute in a way.
and I cute.
Meaning, like, I like in a way as an audience you sympathize, like, oh, he has a disorder, and then he had like because he's in that awkward situation, he
He has
has
this card to
something
show like,
like,
hey
hey,
y'all,
this
like
is
I'm not just laughing at you. I have a condition,
I have a
and
problem.
I laugh at these awkward situations or whatever, or these
Yeah.
situations where that are not meant to be like laughed at. And I apologize, I can't control it. And then
Right.
there's the people who don't want to like listen, like those people who are on the subway who didn't want to listen, and
Yeah.
they beat the crap out of them and all that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So anyway, I guess real quick back to Star Wars. My favorite character is Anakin because of his transformation that he had becoming Darth Vader. Was just a phenomenal and relatable storyline that I think we as people all go through at some points in our lives where we brought up one way, then we have our internal conflicts and we don't know how to resolve them, and then we end up getting into a very dark place, but then there's still that light at the end of the tunnel by those that you're surrounded with and those who want to help you, and they end up bringing you back. And I think that
sorry.
is just a great story to relate. What's up?
You said light at the end of the tunnel. I saw a meme last night, and they were talking about it
Yeah.
literally was about Star Wars, and it said like when your teacher says there's a light at the end of the tunnel or something like that, and the light it said the light at the end of the tunnel is the shot of Darth Vader in Rogue One when he lights up his lightsaber at the end, like oh god.
Oh. Okay, let's talk about Rogue One just real quick. I thought it was a great Star Wars story to bridge, episodes 3 and 4. How it takes place right before episode 4,
Mm-hmm.
right, to some extent. I thought it was slow in the beginning, but then in terms of like just the way things were playing out, but then those last 35 minutes were just glorious.
It's
And
about to go down.
it was about to go down. And I'm so happy that they reshot
The very end.
the very end of Vader's scene, because it just shows you I think it shows you his true character as Darth Vader when he just unleashes versus the way he was portrayed in episode 4 being just like, this figure, right? But again, when you keep that in mind after you watch Rogue One and then you watch episode 4, right, like back to back, you kind of see that, that temperament of I just killed a bunch of people to get where I'm at, to get where I'm at, and I need to find these things. Like I need to get to my goal. I need to reach my goal. I need to find these plans. I need to make it. I need to stop this from happening. So
Right.
the fact that they included that was just amazing. And of course, it's just who doesn't want to see Darth Vader finally in a Star Wars film?
Just going like just
Just
compared to
going
their
at
lives,
it.
like yeah, like
Because the fight sequences they got, I mean, they sequentially got better over time, right? Episode 4 was just a little cheesy, but again, it was just like their first lightsaber fight duel with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And then episode 5 between Luke and Vader.
Emotional. It was very emotional
Right.
fights.
Right. And then 6 was just like, oh, this is Luke, almost on the edge, but he ends up bringing his father back, right? It's just like that close point of no return. And then, of course, episodes 1, 2, and 3, the fight choreography was just spectacular, especially episode 3, Battle of the Heroes with Anakin and Obi-Wan. It was just marvelous because you know the story between them, and so you see that one's on offense, one's on defense, and then it reverses, and you see that in the sword play, and it's just amazing. So yeah,
About Rogue One, the thing that I really
yeah,
liked about it was the fact that there were all these hidden these individuals that all did something. They all played a role. Everyone had their part to play. You know,
absolutely.
And like there was another meme that I saw, and it said like in episode 4 they're like thankfully we have these plans given to us by Princess Leia, right? And then there were these, and then you see the guys are from Rogue One. They're like, who are we? Like, hello, we did everything. What are you talking about?
And it's something that I noticed was like, oh, this is a very, like, again, from a logistical point of view, oh, this is a very diverse cast. You have a British woman, you have a Latino man, and this and that, like, and you have all these different characters, right, from different backgrounds. And I was like, how come you don't see, like, this is as I'm watching Rogue
Right.
One. I was like,
Yeah.
how come you don't see any of these characters in episode 4? Oh,
They all
that's
dead. They
why.
all died.
I haven't watched Solo, and from what I've heard from you and our older brother Eamon and others, like, it didn't really add to the story. It was just like, oh, how did Han meet Chewie? Oh, how did he get the Falcon? Oh, how did he meet Lando? Like, those knots, right, were being tied.
Yeah, and it was like I said. So going back to something that I said about just about movies in general, I enjoyed the movie, and
Hmm.
that's that. Like I enjoyed it. It's spectacular? No. Was it
No.
like just different? No. Did it add something? Did it add even the tiniest bit of something to Han and the backstory between him and Chewie? Yeah, it did. And for that
Yeah.
reason, it was enjoyable. It also added a new dimension to like. I mean, there's a surprise at the end. You probably heard about it, but anyway.
I haven't,
Um,
probably. Anyway,
so
in terms of favorite episode of Star Wars, mine is episode 3. And yours is episode 3. Okay, so we're on the same page. And why? Why is episode 3 your favorite?
because it's the best.
Around.
He's gonna stop to keep it down.
You doubt. Yeah, right. So, like,
Something is
okay,
wrong, by the way. I don't know what that is. I don't know if you heard. Oh, I know what it is.
your AirPods.
My AirPods are dying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No.
No. Right. So I think that's a good place to stop. This was so much fun. I'm so glad we did this, and thank you, Abdurrahman, again taking your time out to do this awesome live stream of real time talking about Star Wars. So again, to all those who are watching, happy Star Wars Day, and may the Force be with you. And I can't believe it's already been a year since I did that tutorial on how to do the lightsaber effect, even though I technically did not show how to do it, but I talked about
Thank
it.
you. You finally admitted it.
Yes,
Admit it.
it,
Admit it.
but it was a fun video to do because the cloning effect and stuff. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Abdurrahman, until next time, I'll get back to you in just a little bit. Guys, thank you all so much for watching and tuning in. I hope y'all enjoyed this live stream of Real Time, where we are live talking about film and television and everything in between. This was a lot of fun. I can see you in my corner. Don't do that. If y'all enjoyed this live stream, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you hit that post notification down below, and make sure you are tuned in for this Wednesday, where I will talk about how The Secret is out and that films are not exclusive to Hollywood anymore. On Wednesday, 6 p.m. CST, May 6th. And also coming up this Saturday, another episode of Real Time. I have a special guest, Miss Lina Muhammad, who is a photographer who has been doing a lot of great activism and work. So we're going to have her come on and talk about her work with photography and all her traveling that she's done, obviously, before quarantine was put in place. So very excited about these episodes coming up. So make sure you are tuned in. And until next time, I will see y'all in the next one. Assalamu alaikum. Peace out.